Hello, it's been a while, and we are back with a new season of AIXC Leader Talks, a podcast where industry experts go beyond the buzz to explore what's coming next in AI, analytics, and emerging technologies. In each episode, we don't just talk about trends, but we break down real business applications, challenges, and the impact these innovations are having across the enterprise. I am Roshali, and we at AIXC are really excited to kick off this new season with a timely and thought provoking conversation about one of the most important trends for this year, Agentic AI. And in this episode, we will be exploring its transformative potential in supply chain. Joining us today are two of our council members who bring both insight and hands on experience to the conversation. Arjun Srinivasan is the director and head of data science at Wesco International, where he leads enterprise wide AI/ML and Gen AI strategy. His work spans critical business functions from supply chain forecasting, warehouse operations, and route optimization to e commerce, sales, and pricing. With a career spanning ExxonMobil, Amazon, and AWS, Arjun brings unmatched experience in high performance computing, algorithm development, and operationalizing AI at scale. And steering this conversation forward is Sajay Suresh, Senior Director of Applied Science at Microsoft. With over 14 years of experience, Sajay leads data science and planning teams to develop AI and ML solutions that drive business impact. He's passionate about building hybrid AI solutions that are as scalable as they are impactful, blending ML with classical strategy and economic modeling. Together, Arjun and Sajay explore questions about supply chain automation and intelligence. What can agentic AI realistically solve in the supply chain today? Where should we apply it? And just as importantly, where should we not? How do we balance technological optimism with operational caution? This episode is a masterclass in thinking deeply and acting wisely in an era where AI can do more than ever. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
Hey Arjun,
Okay.
thanks for taking the time again, man. I really appreciate you doing that.
No, like I said, like thanks, and looking forward to some exciting discussions with you. So let's
Yeah,
let's get started.
absolutely. When it's thinking about the topic itself, it's supply chains, I heard, and agentic AI. So on one side, possibly you have the most critical thing the world needs as a backbone. In its most fragile state potentially now, with all the disruptions that we see, the impact we see, the worries we have. And then you have possibly what the optimists would describe as the coolest tech for a generation, agentic AI. Is it a timely conversation or is it more chaos in the supply chains with agentic AI? Maybe I'm being a devil's
No,
advocate here.
no, I think that's a great question, Sajay. I would say yes. I mean, like you're right about the dynamics of supply chain right now. I mean, like let's understand that a little bit, right? I mean, like you and me have both worked in that era. From what I see is, like to build a supply chain, uh, I mean, to building a resilient supply chain and autonomous
Mm-hmm.
is like really the need of the hour, right? Why? Because it takes a lot of time from an end-to-end perspective. If you take a warehouse or an operations, for instance, that holds inventory physically, like
Mm-hmm.
they have to think about what are all the dynamics at play, all the way from an inbound stock that comes in from a
Mm-hmm.
customer order to the outbound, right? And like that's just like a lot of things at play. And to me, and like a few of the things that kind of impact supply chain broadly is, like there are ERP events. Like most of the manufacturing companies, especially who deal with supply chain, look at their ERPs, right? Like that is their starting point. There is a lot of the market dynamic. We know
Mm-hmm.
geopolitically, we live in a world which is very
Yeah.
volatile. We live in a world of VUCA, right? Like volatility, uncertainty, and whatnot. There is a lot of the social sentiment that is changing, like with more
Mm.
digital users, with tools like Instagram and TikTok and all that, like these can also move the needle
Mm.
depending on who says what. And then there is also this large scale, like by the other impacts that can actually disrupt the supply chain
Mm.
globally, right? So if you take all of this, now relate to what has been happening in a very traditional sense, is again, you've been doing capacity planning for say for compute and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, I've been doing demand planning and more of like lead time predictions, both for customers, like demand planning for customers and lead time prediction for the supplier. If you think about these processes that are existing, like I said, it's very manual in nature,
Yeah.
and the frameworks are also very linear. Like we kind of
Mm.
do demand forecasting based on very simplistic linear assumption. Like we are assuming stable lead times or rule-based lead time. Now, where can automation, and like even before talking about AI or agentic AI, where can automation come as your traditional tools struggle because of this? So the need of the hour is how can we create a system to have a lot of dynamicity in it and
Mm.
have the sense and respond loops that learn from every signal, right? Like as I talked
Mm.
about, all the way from ERP to this market disruption, social
Mm.
sentiment, and whatnot. So if
Yeah.
you can create such a system, that would be the need of the hour. And that's where I feel agentic AI, where they can come in as, hey, like you can orchestrate that end-to-end supply chain in an autonomous manner. Then you can think of how can you get real-time information about something. Then you have an agent kind of going searching that and getting back. At the core of it, you still have to run your traditional demand planning, whether
Yeah.
there is a time series forecasting or whether there is an operations research based optimization. You can't move away from that. But then
Mm.
all these other macroeconomic indicators and external dynamics can be fetched in real time through agents. So that's kind of the interplay where I see where agentic
Got
AI
it.
can come in and overall improve. I don't know what you think from your perspective.
No, 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 that is very interesting, right? Uh, if if I think about ability to, I'm in the cloud capacity planning world for a while now. But if I take my that lens off, put back my consulting lens from the manufacturing supply chain and all the shipping lanes that we have for the supply chain, there are so many real-time decisions that we wish we would have taken once we realize
Mm,
the issue. They're like, oh, this trade route was going to slow down. We knew that information like a week ago. There's a storm coming. Maybe we should have increased the trucks from the other trade route, right? These are decisions.
yep,
When we do a root cause analysis, we're like, oh, if only we had reacted immediately.
yeah,
And I think our reaction every time is to set up a new process. But the problem, the next time that's going to turn up is a new one. And we need a new process. And so we're always behind the action kind of sense rather than being proactive about the action. So I can definitely see where agentic AI can come in and say, hey, I can monitor, let's say something as simple as weather, right? I
mm,
can monitor weather on the trucking routes all the time
yep,
and not just advise the truck on which route to take, but also inform my hub and spoke model that, hey, these routes have a high likelihood of delays. Give the supply chain planner an option. Do you want to increase from alternate routes, right? So that your customer impact can be minimized as you handle the volatility of your supply chain. So no, definitely, I can definitely see how it can help. But the key to this also is, I guess, the tough question is where should I apply agentic AI versus run the traditional supply chain? I think you alluded to that earlier in the discussion. Like which parts of my business, maybe, and this
yeah,
there's no perfect answer, right? I know this is
yeah,
something the world's still figuring out. But which parts of my business, let's keep it with the traditional forecasting, supply chain planning method. Well, which parts of the business should I experiment with agentic AI? Because I have a cautionary tale, which maybe I'll get to later about new technology being
mm,
used before we know how to use it and
yeah.
leading to even more chaos, right? So, and maybe that's where I'm coming from on that.
No, like that's an interesting point, and like you aptly put it, in terms of where overall like AI or more, I would say, data-driven decisions can be made and
Mm,
make that end-to-end supply chain cycle better. See, when I think about agentic AI, like if Gen AI last year that was an enabler. Agentic AI is a doer. So I would look
Mm,
at process inefficiencies within a workflow or within that supply chain cycle. To your
mm,
point, like say if you want to look at the real-time events, whether that's a geopolitical or a weather event, and take proactive actions. Right now, how is it happening? Most of the time, it is very manual. Somebody gets this signal through an ERP
absolutely.
because a human has to intervene, right? So I would
Yeah.
say, look at this low-hanging fruit. I mean, like,
Mm,
don't automate or orchestrate end-to-end with agentic AI to start with, because it might not make sense from a cost benefit perspective. But look at the key pain point. Most of the time, that's going to be a manual intervention step where
mm,
humans are spending a lot of time, and that could be like capturing some external signal. And
yeah.
like these to me are like a low risk, low effort, and high reward. So I would kind of
Mm,
look at that kind of an opportunity within your workflow, and then start experimenting that, like using your tool based agents and like whatever underlying framework that you're using, and see if that is improving that process. Like you have to map it to the KPI, right? Like whether
absolutely.
if you are
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
logistics based company, you need to look at KPIs like OTIF, and then
Mm-hmm.
see like if every stone that you turn is that improving your OTIF there, right? Like your on time info. So that's also important why and where you apply agentic AI in these loops.
Oh, that's a great point. I think I couldn't agree more, right? The basics of if you're doing something which is truly transformative from tech standpoint in your supply chain, go back to your process and
Yep.
ensure your process is right. That doesn't change, right? Even within my organization, there's always this push suddenly to say every a couple of years you'll say, hey, can we do things differently? And I
Yeah.
think you want to time your agentic AI investments with that business
Correct.
process change rather than saying agentic AI is this magic pill that is going to come and solve your problems. It's going to automate decisions that we give it a framework to automate. So if our
Yeah.
framework itself is flawed or maybe outdated for the current environment, it could lead to bad decisions. So one of the things whenever I have had conversations, folks in this space, I think come to a conclusion is, yeah, agentic AI as a separate exercise within as a tech exercise doesn't make sense. Agentic AI within the context of process or continuous improvement,
Correct.
that helps a business so that
Yep.
AI is not going to solve it. And this goes back to I think even my consulting days where we were like, oh, AI and data science, and that time data science was
Was separate.
a separate new thing and a new idea at that time. Data science will change how the we operate the business. Not really, right? Data science and AI, even pre LLMs, were a solution. You still
Yeah.
have to go look at your current business process, your problem statements, your KPIs. Where are we moving the needle? And maybe agentic AI helps in reducing the process time, right? To
Yeah.
decision making, right? Or maybe so on the physical supply chain, you can't change much, right? The physical supply chain is the
Correct.
physical supply chain. But how quickly you make decisions instead of taking a week for that decision, maybe your goal is
Exactly.
to do it in one
Yeah.
day with just one
Yeah.
approval from one leader rather than
Exactly.
a war room getting set up every time an event gets
Yeah.
created, right? I think that's a common reaction in companies, right?
Correct.
Here's this big geopolitical event. Let's create a war room, get together for a week,
Yeah.
analyze, and then come up with the result. And we're almost reactive and we may have lost the moment. But there are
Yeah.
still decisions, I'd argue, right, which maybe AI agents is not the right place right now till there are enough such data points, right? Like, especially, I know you're an Amazonian, right? So the one-way door decision
Mm. Right.
right? Versus two-way door, right? And for
Correct.
the audience, the two-way door decision is something that anytime you make a decision, you're unsure whether it's right or wrong. That's true of most decisions. There are very few obvious decisions. If it's a two-way door decision, it's a decision I could take today. In 3 months, I could revisit it, and it wouldn't cost me much. A one-way
Correct.
door decision is something I've made. It'd be really expensive to get out of that decision. So any
Right.
one-way door decision, I think it's a safe assumption to say don't go agentic AI right now. Wait
Exactly.
for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm like you cast that like really perfectly, uh, Sajay. I would say, like the one-way, two-way door kind of like rings bell and brings me memory from my past. But yeah, I mean, like to your point, I would say if you need to do damage control, and if that process is irreversible because you
Hmm.
put a new technology in the loop, which we did not have full idea of, what its pros and cons are, then I would say stay away from it. So that's why I always look at this, some kind of a like a risk matrix there, and say if that certain process in your workflow is less risky, to your point, right? I'm like
Mm.
sending an email to the supplier
Yeah.
notifying that this part needs to get from a customer. If you can automate that and use agentic AI, like an email agent to send that note to the supplier instead of having to rely on your planners and buyers, so
Hmm.
you are saving hours to seconds or days to minutes, So those are the, like those are, I would say, the first baby steps that you should take, because they're like what will happen in the worst case, right? Like even if your agentic AI gives the wrong part numbers, sends that out to suppliers, that damage is, like it
Hmm.
is still
Yeah.
reversible
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
extent. You
Yeah.
are not
Yeah.
going to put your company's risk at reputation or like a reputation at risk. So I would say people, as both the technologists and the leaders and the domain experts within companies have to critically think of each and every step. They need to have very clear understanding of what their
Mm.
current process is
Yes.
and look for opportunities for automation. And as you put it aptly, wherever a real-time responsiveness is needed, which can kind of, slightly swing the decision-making realm from a totally reactive to kind of partly proactive approach, then I would say like those are the areas which are right to look into for agentic AI.
Absolutely. One interesting example that's coming to mind is the other day I was at a hackathon, and this
Mm,
hackathon was for the high schoolers in the Redmond area in Washington, right? And they had an agentic AI application which they done a demo of, which I thought was beautiful, which was around the Palisades fire,
mm,
where they said the fire is dynamic, right? The wind
okay.
direction changes. It can suddenly start increasing in a particular direction a lot and then slow down.
Mm,
Now, this time, with the resources you have, you're trying to orchestrate the resources to reduce damage.
okay.
And so, real-time
Interesting.
monitoring framework, right? Of so, and they're imagining that the resources they have is drones, they have fire
Mm,
engines, they have human beings, and and they have ambulances, of course, for the folks who are, uh, impacted by it. But now they are trying to orchestrate through an agent what is the most optimal way, one, to reduce the fire spread, two, to ensure anyone who's critically injured gets the service needed.
mm,
So now this is dynamic decision making. I love the
yep.
application, right? I'm like, that's beautiful, right? Because I know the goal. What I don't know is the pieces to keep moving around to get to the goal
Correct.
all the time. And
Yep.
that I thought was beautiful application of real time decision making, right? Like,
Right.
how do I
Right.
control a fire with the resources I have at hand, optimizing for a goal where it gives lesser opportunity for the agentic AI to go hallucinate because you've given it a
Yep.
goal. This is what you're optimizing for. And
Yep.
at the same time, it's real time. This is the true value of not having to wait for human decision making. I
Yeah.
was enamored. By the way, these are high school kids, and they're like brilliant idea. Like the kids
Wonderful.
that are coming through with AI is so native to them, of how they think, how they search.
Yep.
It's amazing.
No, I
Um,
think that's a good point. I mean, like a bit of a sidetrack there, like
yeah,
kids of the next generation, as I said, like how we got used to internet when we were in high school, college, the next generation kids are going to be exposed to AI. So AI is going to be very native to them. Like you and me have to talk about
yeah,
how to infuse and embed AI in the workflows. For them, it is kind of norm, you know.
exactly,
So you don't
exactly,
have to teach them
exactly.
that. So that's
Oh,
a interesting perspective.
absolutely. And the next one, I think the note that I had around was agentic AI versus bots. I'll tell you my
Mm,
prior. If I have the
okay.
option, I would do a bot every time, at least in today's tech stack. And maybe I'm the pessimist in me, but with a bot in my head, it's the output is guaranteed at that same level for a long, like consistently. But of course, it won't be able to be dynamic. But what are your thoughts on it? Agentic AI versus bot?
Unfortunately, I don't have another answer. I am exactly on the same thought as you. So I can give another perspective. I would always go bots or RPAs first.
Yeah.
Like in this era of and now, like I can share a little bit more perspective because I've been involved in a lot of these intelligent automation conferences where they talk
Mm.
about RPA versus agents or bots versus agent. To me, if your existing work stream is running fine with a bot with that hard-coded business logic or some kind of a soft-coded business logic, I would say just go with it.
Yeah.
Like don't just force fit an agentic AI just for the cool tech aspect of it, right? But there are cases I can at least quote like one of them where like agentic AI might be useful there. Again, you have to do cost benefit analysis. Like, are you getting the bang for the buck by replacing an RPA bot, which can almost cost you nil versus compared to an agentic AI. Now, like it could cost you 10 times more than just using an LLM as a RAG-based chatbot, for instance. So this one particular example where I saw was, like again, when you think of a warehouse operations or like when you think of that supply chain cycle within a physical warehouse, like I talked about the customer order life cycle, right? Like the time when a customer places order, your stock shows up in your inbound all the way to the outbound. There, like your RPA can orchestrate it, right? Because it's actually going to do one step. Like say if you have 10 different steps, like in an order to cash, right? Order to cash is a very common workflow
Yep.
within the supply chain life cycle. And say like you have 10 different steps, your RPAs and bots can go fetch the information, put it somewhere else, then trigger the next step, so on and so forth. You can do it in Azure or like anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like there are UI path
Yep.
kind of tools now to do that. Now, where it can fail is to your point when that responsiveness, you need to have fetch real-time information as a feed to respond to some of the actions that has to be triggered, then a bot might not be good. Yes, you can still use a
Yeah.
bot to
See what you're saying.
as a web search agent and get that, but those are the places where I'm seeing that agentic AI can automate that process faster without these choke points, right? Because your
Makes sense.
bots have, I mean, like they're not like intelligent enough. So
Yeah.
anytime you need an added layer of intelligence in your workflow orchestration, then I feel it can. But
That's a great point.
it shouldn't
Yeah.
be bot or agentic AI, right? Bot as the
That's a great point.
baseline,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then add agentic AI if needed.
Yeah. No, agreed. And because I think you hit it spot on, right? Because I think of all of this in the idea of automation, decision automation, right?
Mhm.
There is input output automation, then there is decision automation. This is the idea in some decision automation.
Yep.
And in the past, whenever I looked at business process, I'm like, we can automate this, but the lines of code needed to maintain this would be atrocious, right?
Correct.
Because the bot would have to, for every edge case with the human is adjusting the process for. And that's where agentic AI can come in, saying, hey,
Yep.
for these decisions, there are some straight line decisions, right? These
Yep.
self-serve decisions, let it be business rule based. These
Yep.
are the ones where the algorithm needs to be aware of the goal and may have to tweak the business rule to achieve that goal. And that's where agentic AI can come in. So yeah, I think great point. It's not agentic AI or bots, it's agentic AI and bot for any real business process that
Correct.
we have.
Right.
Perfect. Awesome. Um, the next one is more, I think, a people question for me, right?
Hmm.
Agentic AI, I'm convinced, by the way, as much as of the pessimism I shared early in the call, this is just a technology which is maturing. It can only get better from here, right? So I'm convinced for the next 10 to 20 years, you'll see workflow automation through agentic AI happening. It may be
Yep.
better agents, better and better agents, hopefully in the future. But what is the people aspect of this from an organization, right? Like there are
Hmm.
AI for native organizations, right? They've come up in this age. It's easier for them to just start over there. But how
Yeah.
do you think about all the 99% other organizations who need to adopt agentic AI? How do you upskill people? How do you get it in process? What is the mindset we should be having for this?
No, that's another great point. So, like, here's the thing, right? Like, two or three things from a organizational enabler perspective. Uh, I think that you need to think of agentic AI just like any new technology. Like
Mm,
when cloud came, after that IoT came, then traditional ML, or like even like an SDLC, any new technology that comes and then you put that as a part of your work process,
mhm,
like you should treat of agentic AI. And what I mean by that is taking a product-based operating model to me
mm,
is like really important. I'm a huge fan of it. Like instead of force fitting, like as I said, agentic AI in a workflow, if you think of that product lens, you can work backward from the
mm,
customer and work backward from the business and see, hey, what are the pieces of the puzzle from that a technology perspective that you need to fit in. I think like not every organization is mature in that because they just think of their engineering arm immediately and try to put all these cool new tech in there. But if you take a product-based arm, that is going to be much better. You'll fit
mm,
in the right size, fit things like RPA or bot or RPA or agent or bots or agent become how can bots and agent work together if you take that product based.
mm,
The other thing is that I can say from my own perspective, like when we try to put agentic AI workflow through a supply chain lifecycle, look at the personas. And every company for every industry it could change. But if you take a general manufacturing industry supply chain, there are planners and buyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are the people who kind of decide, what to stock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yep.
they kind of get the purchase order from the customer. Then there is actually the warehouse and operations people, right? The boots
Mm-hmm.
on the ground folks. Like if you walk in an aisle in Amazon or in Walmart in the warehouse or the distribution center, they kind of decide where to stock, right?
Mm. Yep.
And
Yep.
another set of personas are going to be like the finance and analytics people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So they are going to, I mean, even before that, I would say a third set of persona are kind of the folks in the fulfillment or the logistics part. They
Yep.
they would say how to move, right? Like how are we going to like move the stock? And then the fourth set of person are the finance and the analytics. Is it
Mm-hmm.
profitable for us? So to me, if you want to bring in agentic AI into a supply chain realm, know your personas, and then you
Mm.
have to educate them independently because like one is going to be like the people in the shop floor or the warehouse are going to be like hardcore blue collar people, right? All they do is like pick, pack, and ship in day in
Yep.
and day out. People in the finance are just going to be crunching numbers. So
Yep.
like the way you kind of educate, upskill one versus the
Mm.
other is not exactly the same. So I just want to, I mean,
No, that
I
makes sense.
I
That,
know I
that,
didn't
that,
I
no,
didn't
no, that,
have an answer, but knowing the persona will lead you to that right approach in terms of how to upskill
absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. And maybe I'm just to add to what you said, I'm going to borrow from one of the speakers I heard at the conference, talked about especially pick an early adopter from that persona or profession
Mm,
as your supporter in an organization, right? So let's
yeah,
say I've talked to, and this was a particular example was for lawyers, right?
mm,
Uh, So the question posed to the speaker at that time was, "Hey, how did you ensure your lawyers, most of them were experienced by 10 to 15 years, and this was like a year ago, right? Start adopting AI agents into their workflow?" They said
yeah,
the answer is simple: pick one of their own and make them their
mm,
early adopter, because
mm,
you not just build the right application then around that user persona, but when this someone from their profession is vouching for it, you'll have a lot more people absorbing it, right?
right.
So that I thought was a simple 101 of new technology introduction, which I thought was a good reminder for me. I'm like, yeah, let's not
Mm,
complicate it by bringing everyone
yeah,
into a 100 people meeting and trying to explain to them what they need to do, trying to tell them how to do their jobs. Let's just pick one or two early adopters, learn what would truly help them, and then get that tool into their hands and make them your brand ambassador. So that I think
correct.
was a good reminder for me. And the
Yeah,
other thing which
that's a,
I right, the other thing I think I tell my team are majorly data science systems, so they're very excited about LLMs, AI agents.
mm,
You have self learners. But in my partner teams, you have folks who are in traditional supply chain roles, right?
yep,
And one of
exactly.
the perspectives you have in Microsoft is the growth mindset, which you would have heard about,
Mm,
which almost in one way implies that what you know today is irrelevant. There's something new
yeah,
tomorrow. Be open to learning that,
mm,
and that can't be stressed enough in the world of AI. If
right.
the modern product manager PM was expected to know SQL querying and basic data analytics 5 years ago,
Mm,
in 6 to 12 months, I wouldn't be surprised if every PM is supposed to have some level of control over AI agents and how to use them in their workflow. Right? It's almost a necessary tech tool that you should be aware of.
yeah,
And so, keeping your mind open to ideas, experimenting and failing.
mm,
Um, I would tell you my POC that I built on my machine for my agent worked great.
mm-hmm.
When you try and put it in a production process, that's when you learn the realities of the world and the edge cases it can't satisfy. And
Yep,
so be open to experimenting and failing, but fail fast and build again. Right?
exactly. Yeah,
Having that approach and mindset, which I think fundamentally boils down to a growth mindset, that would help a lot for organizations.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm like really well said. Well said. I'm actually going to borrow one of the things that you said in the past about the hub and spoke kind of model. I would say using that model between the technology teams and your supply chain team, right? Like whether that is
Mm,
the shop floor, the operations, or the finance analytics, whatever that is, that's really important. So what will happen, and like I've been like doing this with my team, right? The data scientists in my team or the AI engineers, ML engineers in my team know more about the planning and the buying and the
mhm,
purchasing process. and then the planners and the buyers know about prompt engineering. So there is a little bit of cross collaboration there, but that's the only way to pick it up, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
unless or until you start to infuse and bring these multiple teams together, it's just hard to get each other's perspective. And then to your point, having these champions, having the first movers,
Mm-hmm.
would kind of help you accelerate that adoption. So that is kind of for any technology piece that you need to
Absolutely.
do that. But yeah, good points.
Absolutely. My next perspective was going to be around ROIs. And before that, I
Hmm.
just maybe wanted to share the cautionary tale of new technology that I had personally experienced, which was around, so this was several years back. This is when interactive voice response, IVR call routing systems, which are
Ah,
responsive to sound, were a new
hmm.
thing. And maybe a lot of the younger generation now is thinking, what are you talking about? It's such an obvious thing. But this is around 2010s where it was a new thing. And I had a client who had bought into that technology for their call
Hmm.
customer operations. They thought they could self-service a lot more calls, right? So you need,
Hmm.
in theory, you need lesser folks and more specialized folks to handle tougher calls now. And they ended up saying, okay, I've invested in technology. I don't need 4 call centers. I need like 2 customer support call centers.
Hmm.
And they made the decision at the same time. They introduced the new technology because the new technology was supposed to solve the problem, right? It was supposed to self-serve more customers. And then they trimmed down to just 2 offices at the same time.
Hmm.
The problem was new technology was great, but its workflow was not well thought through. So what you
I see.
actually had was a self-service percentage at same or lower levels than what was there earlier,
Hmm.
and lesser people to handle it. So because you made the bet at the same time, you did not stage the investment to say, hey, let me do the change management, do a test and control, classic test and control, all of it. You invested in technology and you're like, you don't have the money because you invested in technology, so you dropped some call centers. And they had worse metrics all turned worse, right? Uh, the number of callbacks, the duration of customers staying on the call all turned worse when they did this change because they're not
Hmm.
adopted the technology the right way. It took them 6 months to figure out how to adopt the technology right. They put the right business rules, get them for the right type of calls and all that stuff. But for 6 months, it was hell, right?
Ah.
With that cautionary tale, how do we think about ROIs for these investments in Gen AI? Because they are expensive. They are really expensive. Run GPUs, some of these services can be really expensive.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And to make things worse, I can also say that supply chain, the core supply chain organization within any company or the team that handles supply chain is more of a, like they're not going to be adding to the top line,
Mm.
right? It's all about like inventory optimization. How are you going to like save costs? So
Yep.
it's all about cost avoidance and cost saving. So that makes things even worse because why would you buy something or why would you spend something on an additional piece of technology without knowing, how is it going to kind of improve your
Mm-hmm.
overall KPI from that inventory or from a supply chain team? So I would say I would kind of go back to that point that I mentioned earlier in our discussion there, use these AI agents and more of these routine decisions to start with. The low
Mm.
effort, low risk is really important.
Mm. Mm.
Low effort also translates to like lower cost, right? Don't
Mm.
wait for 1 year and then do all your experiments and research and fine tune your own supply chain small language model and then say that, oh shoot, it never works. So don't burn, like you have to watch your burn rate,
Yeah.
and like literally if you are going to be targeting that low risk low effort, most of it would come within those routine decisions that you have to make. So I think that is one way to
Mm.
manage your cost or have a pulse in the cost and put yourself, I mean, time box yourself, right? I mean, like I said, in the past when I, like in like when I used to work at like Exxon and Amazon, you can afford to wait for 12 months to 18 months for
Mm.
these big data-driven
Yeah.
technology projects, whether that's a
Yeah.
simulation or that is a
Yeah.
deep
Yeah. Yeah.
learning. But now, like I would say like 6 to 8 weeks is the time that I give my team, right? Like within
Yeah.
that 6 to 10 week, not just a proof of concept, proof of value. I need to see the
Mm.
proof of value in 6 to 8 weeks. Otherwise, we're not doing it, guys. So that's kind of the approach. Not and to me, all these are the small rocks that you can turn.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are these big transformative rock, like who knows, like there is this thing called a multi-echelon inventory optimization, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when you have orders or stock coming
Yep.
in through multiple layers, then you need to look at your warehouse, your distribution
Mm.
center, so on and so forth. Like companies like again, Amazon
Yep.
and Walmart and Wesco, we all have to do that. Those things take time because
Mm.
there you have to fuse data and AI with core operations research, that is like a bigger rock to turn.
Yep.
Or if you want to do full scale demand forecasting across all your inventory at SKU level, it's going to take time. But to
Yeah.
me, there are a lot of these smaller rocks. I would say focus on those. That's what I'm calling it, like everyday AI. I didn't
Makes sense.
coin that term, but the likes of Gartner are calling it an everyday AI. So I would say
Mm.
focus on your everyday AI while you have a pulse on your transformative AI initiative.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yes, grab the proverbial low-hanging fruit, as they say, right? As
Right.
you go after this. Awesome. So, looking forward, I know this is a fast transforming space. Oh, actually, maybe one other point on this, especially when
Mm,
you talk about low-hanging fruit. One of the other reasons to maybe go after low-hanging fruit is it is such a fast and dynamic space.
correct.
There are so many companies coming up with solutions that
Yep.
you may not have to build your solution. You could plug
Exact.
into their services or solutions, especially in the supply chain side, right? There
Correct.
are a ton of startups, there's a ton of big companies building solutions.
Yep.
And if there is a company which is already prompted and trained the algorithm enough for to set up the supply chain, it's much easier to start there than for an ML scientist to start from scratch and say, here is my latest 4.0 model, and now
Yep.
let me teach it my business and explain it how to run queries against it.
Yep.
If a
Right.
company does it, a supply chain company does it, they'll likely be better at it because that's their bread and butter. You can work off that to
Exact.
fine tune it rather than doing your own stuff.
Correct. No, like you're spot on, Sajay. I would say, like, in fact, every now and then, what I remind my team is go to GitHub, look for repos for a problem that we have to solve, and look at the open source community. Like
Yeah.
start from Hugging Face. There might be somebody would have fine-tuned a model,
Yep.
and let's use that as a starting point. Gone are the days where everything is closed source, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
still remember when GPT kind of initially came in the GPT-2 days, Bloomberg came up with their Bloomberg GPT, and they
Mm.
kind of locked it within themselves, right? I mean, they made a big deal about it. There was a lot of research papers and everything, but gone are those days. Like
Yeah.
that is 5 years back. Now,
It's that.
if somebody comes up with an industry-specific model, it's already out there. So thanks
Yeah.
to the open source community, like we all have to take full advantage of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll put the open source thing aspect. I'm glad we connected that. So maybe now, as an question is looking forward. I know it's a very dynamic space, right? I think, maybe the only thing I know is I can't imagine what the world's going to look like in 2 years. That's the only thing I know. But what excites you the most as you look at this agentic AI roadmap in the context of, planning supply chains?
Hmm.
Is there a
I would
particular
say,
trend that you're looking at saying, maybe this is the trend of the industry, or these are the things I'm excited by and to achieve in the next 1 or 2 years?
yeah, I think I can say a few things, right? Like one is this hyper personalization. And again, that is
Mm,
hit e-commerce. I would also relate that to the supply chain world. What I mean by hyper personalization is say you are, like say you are a Pepsi or some manufacturing line, right? Where there is a lot size one production. And imagine an agent driving that lot size one production, but off your e-commerce feed or your
mm,
e-commerce signal, right?
mm.
And this, like what this will actually happen is there is and I'm a big operations research fan. I didn't
Yeah.
study operations research, but through my MBA and like I read a lot of books, there's an effect called the bullwhip effect,
Yeah.
right? And what the bullwhip effect mean, and like you will have to be mindful of that as well because whatever downstream happens, the
Absolutely.
variability in the demand downstream is going to affect you upstream. That variability will increase. That's the bullwhip effect. But if you are able to have a pulse on these e-commerce signals or whatever is closer to the customer and feed it all the way back to the suppliers or to the source, you're going to
Mm,
minimize the bullwhip effect
mm-hmm,
drastically.
mm-hmm,
So I'm just waiting for actual operations research folks to kind of
mm,
embrace not just AI, but data-driven decisions, AI, and then agentic AI, and see how can this overall streamlining happen and how can the bullwhip effect be collapsed by being able to bring that right piece of technology. And for that, you need to have complete visibility of downstream and all the signals that come through your e-commerce or through the customers and feed that all the way to the supplier. So that's kind of one thing that excites me.
cool.
I
That's
don't know
cool.
what
I've
about
never thought.
you.
No, I've never thought about it that way. Uh, bullwhip effect reduction to better usage of information through AI. That is fascinating.
I, mean,
What?
I picked up
Yeah, what's
that
up?
idea because I can send that MIT article because I was like I think that came like 3 or 4 months back. and that
Huh?
particularly talked about how can AI overall help to lower the bullwhip effect. So that's when I kind of started to see, I mean, if you have e-commerce,
Right.
because my team supports supply chain and e-commerce, and
Mm,
then when I see that there is a silo there, right? Like whatever the
mm.
customers are asking us, if I am able to somehow pass it on to the supply chain team or all the way to supplier, there is a minimization
It's
of
very interesting. That is
like variability
information.
there.
Yeah, because bullwhip effect, I really need that paper, by the way, because that would help my business flow right now. Because you need to think about the cloud supply chain, right?
Yeah.
Like, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to focus AI demand. I'm trying to figure out what
Mm,
this demand is going to be. But to get a GPU live in a data center, you have almost like 2 to 3 years of work that needs to happen to get the data center live.
mm,
Then you need NVIDIA to land the chips, get all the software in place. NVIDIA has its own supplier workflow. Data centers have its own supply chain.
mm.
Bullwhip effect is all over the place, right?
Yep.
And the more volatile the demand, the multiples of the effect is seen on the supply side and the procurement
Mm,
side. So that'd be super interesting. I'd love to read that paper. And going back to what I am excited by, I am just, I almost want to fast forward to two
mm.
years from now to see what the modern software engineer data scientist looks like.
Yeah.
Because we are all set up to create solutions, right?
Yep.
And I can see the transformation happen, right? Development is faster. You can see the simple features get done faster. But I
Yep.
still can't imagine 2 years down the line, do I have an architect
Mm.
and almost AI agents reporting to the architect,
Right.
right? Or I don't imagine the world, because if I do believe in the idea of productivity, right? AI agents will make us more productive, so the world will be a better place. But how that transforms for each role, like how it works for software engineering, how it
Mm.
works for data science, what the modern planner would look like. I'm just
Yep.
super excited to see that world, and I really can't wait to get to that. I know what the transformation is going to be long. There's going to be bumps in the road, but I can't wait to just see that world, what that world will look like, because I can't imagine it.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, now I don't want to quote it, but either Microsoft or Google did a study with Accenture to talk about this control chain supply tower. I don't know if that rings a bell, maybe
No,
from
I haven't.
Microsoft, I'm not sure. So there, the study was like, how do you create this agentic supply chain organization? Exactly to your point, right? That's a
Hmm.
planner agent, there is like this agent, that agent, and that is like autonomously they run it. Like you have a manager who sits on the top, which is probably a human, but everything else is automatically
Uh,
orchestrated. So I'll try to find that for
that'd be
you as well,
awesome.
and I'll send if I can
Yeah.
get hold of that. But I came across that recently as well. I'm like, wow, I mean, that is an autonomous supply chain tower where you have multiple agents working with each other. So it is a multi-agent system at the end of the day, but then it is completely autonomous.
Wow. It's,
It's
it's
scary
amazing.
at the same
It's
time
scary. It
as
is
it is
scary. It is
scary.
scary. It's like, maybe why even have a manager, right? The manager
Yeah,
also could be an
exactly.
agent
Why
in
would
that
I
world,
run it,
right?
right? Because
But
the
but
one who wrote the one
yeah,
who wrote the paper, he wanted to kind of inject himself at the top, right? Like you can't take humans completely out of the loop. So
yeah,
no, I mean like you're right. If you actually introspect that even further, you don't even need a manager. Like it can be totally autonomous. But
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. No, no, no. For all the doom scrolling, I do think we human beings are very adaptable. We find a way. When I think for all the especially the early in career folks may hear
Mm,
into this call, I'd gotten this question at one of the hangouts I was doing for data scientists, saying, hey, what if you see an AI agent come, which is coming for your job, which is a reality, right? Some of the things that we used to do earlier, even what I do, some of that AI agents should be doing. I shouldn't be coming in every day and writing the same report, sending the same report with the same insights.
yeah,
My response to that is always is, if that is coming, great. I want to be the one building that AI agent with the skill sets
mm,
I have. We are in a good place to go build it, because I have the most context to how this decision needs to be made from a tech standpoint. So I go build that AI agent so I can do something better, right? So I do
yeah,
think even in
exactly.
this doom and scroll, everything autonomous world, humans still play a critical role.
Correct.
Um, that the one of the most interesting papers I read in the last 3 months was that Apple paper about, are these models truly reasoning models or
Mm,
pattern
right,
recognition models, right?
right.
Their conclusion more or less was they are amazing pattern recognition models,
That,
right?
right,
So
right.
if you have a new
They
problem
give the
space, which is
illusion
what
of
you
reasoning.
exactly, right? And maybe it changes with Meta Super Intelligence Lab and what's coming next. It may change.
Mm,
Humans
right.
are still very critical to setting up a framework, the problem statement itself to solve the problem. And the skill of the future for humans is more and more upstream. Go define the problem
Mm,
better, the customer value better, because it's going to be easier and easier to build solutions.
yeah. Right. Right.
That's a wrap on episode 1 of season 2 of AIXC Leader Talks. A big thank you to Arjun and Sajay for not just unpacking the promise of agentic AI in supply chain, but for bringing depth, perspective, and real world experience to the conversation. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, don't forget to subscribe to AI Executive Council on YouTube. We'll be back soon with more voices and stories from the front lines of enterprise innovation. Until then, thanks for listening.